Hi everyone! In just a little bit we'll be working on this I Spy baby quilt, and I'll show you some freehand techniques on this wall hanging. Plus we'll talk about how to get the best use out of needles. But first, Linda Tilfold is here to share some techniques for making quilted wearables. Linda's quilted garments have won awards in shows all over the country, and she has some great examples of her work to show us. Welcome, Linda.
Hi, Linda. It's a pleasure to be here.
I love the idea that your name is Linda T.
Well, I'm the other one.
You're the other one. And you are from
Michigan.
Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And how long have you been a longarm quilter?
About 9 years now.
9 years.
Yep.
And how did you start? How did you get started? Did you start with wearables or?
Actually, I had a lot of quilts in my closet that I had pieced and I wanted to quilt them. And then, I had my machine for a few months and there was a show coming up and I thought, I'd love to enter something, but I don't have time to make a quilt specifically for the show. So I thought it would be easier to make a garment.
Because it's smaller.
Well, yes, of course. I, had no idea what I was getting into because I'd never done it before. So, and out of that whole experience, my barn coat was born, and that was my very first wearable that I ever did on my longarm.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and it's just like grown from there. You've just
well, I'm so fortunate because I can marry two things I'm very passionate about, and that is garment sewing and quilting.
And the quilting,
right?
And it's just wonderful, and we can't wait to have you show us our techniques. But I know that you also have done some emceeing for fashion shows, such as the Machine Quilter Showcase.
Yes.
And so let's take a look at some of your garments and have you tell us about a couple of those.
Okay,
and we've got wonderful models for this.
Okay, sure.
So.
Well, the first garment that I ever made was the barn coat, and that actually the reason it was named that was because I had an Eddie Bauer barn coat that I made the jacket from. I didn't have a pattern. That was the first one I did, and it went on to win many, many awards. So I was, of course, excited about that.
Very encouraged.
Encouraged to try my hand at something else. One of the other ones that I made was with beading. I had always wanted to incorporate beading, and I thought, well, it can't be that hard, so, I'll add a little beading. Well, of course, I don't do anything in a small, simple way, and all of the beads on the amethyst jacket were sewn on by hand, one at a time.
Oh, my goodness.
My first and probably only beading project, I have to say.
Well, it's lovely.
My other favorite one is the turquoise one, Dreams Do Come True. I made that when I was recovering from cancer surgery. And I love all the bright colors, but they don't go anywhere in my house. So I thought, well, I could wear them.
You could wear them.
So that jacket was born out of that. And
that one
beautiful. Was also another one that did very well. So I was very pleased about that.
That's very beautiful. So you're going to tell us how you do this.
Yes, well,
how we lay this out.
Exactly, and there's three basic methods. One is an all-over pattern, and that's the black jacket with the red buttons. That is just, you load your machine just like you're going to make a regular quilt. You have your fabric on top, your fabric on the bottom, and the batting in between, and then you just quilt the all-over pattern of your choice. It could be a pantograph, could be you just freehanding, it could be whatever. Then once it's done, you cut out the pattern as you normally would, and sew it together.
Just like it was fabric.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the second method is the one that I used on my Dreams Do Come True jacket, the turquoise one.
And I love it that you have names for the jackets.
Well, they're all,
superb.
they become, part of your life, so you have to name them.
That's great.
And that one is a little different in that I wanted to do some appliques, so I needed to have small pieces that I could maneuver through my domestic home machine, as I did with the machine applique. So that one, I cut the pattern pieces out of the outer part of the jacket out first, did the applique, and then pinned those onto my batting and backing, which was loaded into my machine.
Okay.
Basted them down and then did my quilting. And the third method is the one that we're going to talk about today.
Okay.
And this one is the one that I employed with the barn coat. This is an all-over. The difference between this one and just doing an all-over pattern is that you've got specific motifs that are placed in areas that you've chosen on your jacket.
Okay.
And that's what we're going to talk about today. So you think that it's going to be an easy process, and if any of you have ever made a whole cloth, you'll know how daunting it is to get that blank slate. So one of the things I like to do first is divide it all up so you know what your real estate is.
Okay.
And for example, you have your paper pattern, whatever pattern you choose. I would suggest if you're a novice sewer that you start with an easy pattern, one that has very few pieces, no collar. Don't let the sleeves scare you. They're really easy to put in, actually easier than doing the binding on a vest, I think. And you need to cut out the pattern in your size. And then what you'll do is place it on your fabric sandwich, and you want to pin it. You don't have to pin it a lot, but just enough so it won't move around, because this is a really important part, especially if you're going to be doing motifs you're going to have to repeat in another area.
That you want in the right place.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
So you pin it down and just take a washable pin, and you want to trace around the pattern exactly. And this is really important because the corners and some of the markings are things you're going to use as reference points when you go to put your actual motifs in place.
Okay.
So you get it all traced around, and then the next step is to baste around. You see, here's my blue line. And then you're going to baste around a couple of inches. You want to leave plenty of room between your actual pattern piece and some space that you're going to continue to quilt. And the reason for that is when you do heavy dense quilting, the fabric is going to draw up.
You don't know how much it's going to shrink.
And you never know.
Okay.
And depending on the batting that you've used, because I always wash everything, the minute I take it out of the machine, it goes in the washing machine.
Okay.
And it's going to shrink.
It's going to shrink.
And you don't want to have, you know, where you're going to lay your pattern piece out of here and you run out of quilting. Trust me on this. I know from experience. It's not a good thing. So I always leave at least a couple of inches around every pattern piece.
Okay.
The other thing that you want to make sure that you do, and this is really, really critical. I've had several students do it the wrong way, and you pay dearly. And that is on most pattern pieces, well, actually, there's two areas. The front, you have a left and a right, and then the two sleeves. And typically, you're going to have a mirror image of whatever it is you're doing, unless you're doing something that's free form and neither side matches. But a lot of times, I like to do things that are symmetrical. So you're going to lay your pattern piece down on your sandwich, mark around it, and then this is really key. You want one with type up and one with type down. And that's the type that's on your pattern piece. So then you flip it over, and again, trace it out just like you did the first time. And then I always, exactly, and it's very important. And one thing you want to consider is that your pattern pieces are laid out evenly spaced and next to each other that are going to be mirror image. So both of your sleeves and both of your fronts. The back and some of the other pieces aren't, you know, you can put them anywhere because there's only one of them. You know, like the collar or whatever. And then once you do that, then it's just a matter of deciding where you want motifs. Again, there's something you really need to consider. If there's a particular area of your body that you don't want to accent, then don't put a motif there.
That's a very good hint.
Yes, because you know your eye is going to be immediately drawn to that motif, especially if you have some background quilting. So if you don't want to accent your hips, then don't put things around the bottom of the jacket. So that's a tip that you can learn. The other thing that you need to consider is your batting. You want to experiment with some batting, and when you do your test, you want to do a fairly big piece because that little 12 by 12 inch sample may not work out, you know, when you go 3D on your body.
What kind of batting do you suggest for the garments? I know you don't.
Well, I like a polyester, a real fine polyester batting. And silk is nice, but it's a little more pricey. And sometimes if you're experimenting with something or you just want to make something that's going to be trendy, you don't want to invest in that. But I like the what I would call low loft polyester batting. In my early days of quilted garments, I used cotton. You know, it didn't occur to me to try other things for a few years. And I much prefer now the flexibility and the feel. You know, it kind of molds to your body a little better. It doesn't make you look like you're walking around, you know.
I suppose in different areas of the country where you are in Michigan.
Yeah, we like batting.
You like you like to be warm. And, you know, where I'm in Texas, you know, the silk batting breathes with you, and that's very appealing.
The other thing I have done, and with great success, is I've used t-shirt cotton.
Oh, just cotton instead of that.
You just go to the, you know, fabric store and buy that. It's the reason I like the t-shirt is it's flexible. If you use flannel, it's going to shrink a lot, and it's very stiff. But if you use the cotton, it's a knit, so it's very flexible and very, you know, free form.
What a great.
The black dress with the sequins that has cotton, t-shirt cotton.
Oh,
so, and
I might really like to try that.
Yeah, and it's thinner, and you know, it gives you a little more subtle look. The quilting doesn't show up as much, but sometimes that might be what you're going for.
Okay.
So it's a lot of fun.
That's great. So we have this motif.
Yes,
going.
okay. So we've made a decision that we're going to use this bottom area. You know, I'm going to accent my hips.
Okay.
Don't ask me why. And I decided that the bottom of the jacket would have some focus. And I've done it on the back, which is already quilted, and then I'm going to put it on the two fronts. So because I'm a freehand quilter, and yet at the same time I like symmetry, oftentimes quilters are challenged with how they get the left and the right side to match. So I've come up with a method that's really, really simple. In the early days, I did all kinds of things to try and get this to come out right, and was successful and not so in some cases. But this, I think, is foolproof and anybody can do it. This is also a good trick when you're trying to quilt something and you've got to do this motif 20 times.
Yes.
This is heavyweight water-soluble stabilizer.
Okay.
It comes on a roll, or however you want to buy it.
So when it's soaked, it
So when it's
actually
wet, disappears. So what you're going to do is quilt one side of your jacket. Wherever your motifs are, you're going to quilt that. When you have that all done, don't do your background quilting yet, because that's going to distort this.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
So then you would take your water soluble. I like the heavyweight because it holds up to a lot of stitching better.
Okay.
And it also, when you pin the four corners, it doesn't tear out. So you just put some pins in the corners over the area that you want to copy.
Okay.
And then just with a permanent marker, and a permanent is key because you're going to wet this.
Oh, all right.
So if you wet
But it still won't get on your quilt anywhere, will it?
No.
Okay.
No,
okay.
And the beauty of it is, because it's permanent, you don't have to worry about it ending up on your quilt or whatever it is you're working on.
Okay.
And it doesn't smear; it dries instantly.
Good.
So you just trace what you've sewn, and you don't have to have a pattern. If you did some beautiful freehand work, you can trace it. You got it all on your water soluble stabilizer. So it's very important as you get ready to do the other side is to make note of your reference points earlier, and that's why it's key that you have these lines drawn very accurately.
In the same place.
Right. So then you've got your pattern, and all you do is
flip it over.
Flip it over.
Okay.
So you have a mirror image. It's very simple. You pin it down, and then it's just a matter of following the lines. And if it's not
so nice.
Exact, it doesn't matter, because it's really the overall effect that you're going for. It's not precision. No one's going to.
It's freehand.
Life is too short to worry about precision.
I like that.
And then once you have that done, because this is going to be big and kind of in your way, I just take a pair of scissors, and you can just, trim it as close as you can. Just get it out of the way. And then go ahead and do your background fill and whatever else you're going to do to the quilt. Then when you're all done, just throw the whole thing in the washing machine.
Yeah, don't fuss about it.
And exactly, you don't have to worry about it. And because it's permanent, it won't end up on your quilt. Now, if it's water soluble, this is going to get in the water, could get on your quilt, could get in your batting.
Right.
So it's
gorgeous idea.
Foolproof.
I love it.
So now we've got all our motifs done. We're going to move on to the background. So would you like me to share with you the background technique?
Yeah, I know the viewers want to watch you sew for a minute here. Is this one of your own background designs? Yeah,
this is just a freehand feather that I do.
Okay.
I teach this a lot because it's very easy for beginners. It's very forgiving. You don't have to really you don't have to pay attention to what you're doing. You can just kind of start and go. And what you want to do is start outside of your basted line. And I like to go in 3s or 5s.
Odd numbers.
Odd numbers are better, but it's not, absolutely imperative.
Not a big deal
no.
if you do 2.
If you lose your mind and you're like, oh, I just did 2, just keep going.
Okay.
And then you echo to the next area. And the reason I love this for beginners is because it teaches you to do feathers in all different directions, which as a quilter is oftentimes necessary. So you would just work your way around, and you can come out and do silly stuff. But I would just go in and fill in, with the feathers, and then you can echo around. And one nice thing is, if you get into a dead end and you think, oh, I'm stuck, you just echo out some more.
It's mesmerizing. It's really pretty.
And again, anybody can do it. It's very simple and very forgiving. And when you get it all done, everyone just thinks you're a genius. So, what more could you ask for?
We like that too. And I think you are.
So, well, thank you. Thank you so much
for being here today.
Oh, it was my pleasure.
All of this knowledge with us.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Linda's Longarm Quilting is made possible by Gamble Quilting Machine Company, worldwide distributors of longarm quilting machines for over a quarter of a century. Quality, innovation, and service.
It's easy to neglect your needle, but I want to share a few tips and tricks that will help you get the best use out of your needles. Always check your needles. A needle with just a little barb on it can cause a broken thread. A simple test is to drag the needle over your fingernail. If it scratches your nail, dispose of it. Even new needles aren't always perfect, so check them too. How often should you change your needle? I change my needle with every quilt. A dull needle can force batting to the back of the quilt, so you don't want that to happen. Speaking of batting, The batting you use can make a difference. Polyester batting tends to dull needles faster. When you're using polyester, you may need to change the needle more often. The size of the needle is also important. Make sure you match the needle size to your project. There are two numbering systems, European and American. Most packages list both sizes. Finally, be careful when disposing of used needles. They can be dangerous in a garbage sack. I use empty film canisters or used prescription bottles. When it's full, I just toss it in the garbage. Or if you want to recycle, used needles are good for hanging pictures on the walls. They leave a small hole when inserted at an angle. I love to hear about your clever uses for needles or any time-saving tips that I can share. I am so excited about the projects that I'm working on today. The first one is an I Spy quilt, and it was pieced by a friend for me, and I'm so excited to give it to my granddaughter when I get it finished. It has all different fabrics in it with cute little prints, so you can sit and do an interactive play with the child. It also has an irregular border design, and those are easy to mount on your machine. All you have to do is load your lining and your batting on without the top, and then you just put your top on top of the batting and then just stitch around it. I also am going to use an extended base, and I want to show you how easy that is to put on. This is the way your machine looks, just like your normal sewing machine. And then you just slip your base on that fast so that you have a nice flat surface so you can use your tools. And I always put that on when I'm going to be doing stitch in the ditch or a round applique or using some of my other tools such as circles. And I have one more little hexagon to stitch around. I'm going to be stitching in the ditch. I never start in a corner or at a point, so I'll start on the side because that's going to be easier for me to meet up my stitches. I'll just secure, and I'm not going back and forth. I'm going in a line with about 6 little stitches there. Then I just place my ruler a 1/4 inch away from that seam and then just gently push the machine along the edge of the ruler. Don't let your hand that's controlling the machine control what you're doing down here. Let the hand that's using the ruler, which is generally the left hand, be in control of where you are going. You can see I keep the ruler on the left side of the needle. I don't want to cross it in on the right side and get my hand in danger of that needle. Come around like this. Here, and then back up, and when I get to the place where I started, I will stop and I'll just do a few little stitches along the same stitching line where I started. Then I move the machine away, grab that thread, go back in the same hole, move it away again, pull up everything, just give it a tug. You don't have to stop and analyze those. Just give it a tug and cut it so you won't have any little tails of thread on the back of your quilt when you're finished. Now I can also baste around the edge of this quilt. And by the way, I am sitting down and I can just roll like that with my chair, and it's wonderful to be able to sit and quilt. You have to have your project closer to you in the front so it's easy for you to reach. But it really gives your feet a rest, especially those long arm quilters like me who have been doing this for a long time. You know, it's just nice to be able to sit down. So I'm stitching around the edges, and this is exactly what you do at the top of the quilt when you first load it. You just stitch around the edge. Take my pins out as I go. I never sew over pins. There we go. So I don't want to take a chance of hitting that pin. Okay, there we go. Now I'm doing a cute little feather design. I'm going to move this clamp so you'll be able to see. I'm going to do a cute little feather design out here on the edge. It's really easy. I just come up here like this, go right into the top with a teardrop, like that. and then reach out in each of these areas that I need to fill in. And you can see over here, I'll just have this feather. Kiss that feather over there, just touch it, and come back. Now, because I can do anything I want to out here on the batting, I'll just come down here like this to fill in the corner. Just doing the very same teardrop design, reaching over and filling in this entire corner. There we go. And over here, I just want you to see how fast you can fill in this whole edge. There we go. That is so fast. I just did 3 of them, just like that. Okay, now we're going to move over to the next project. And so I need to do a roll, and I'll be right back. I finished rolling. I had actually loaded 2 quilts at the same time, and they were not the same length. So I loaded them both onto the take-up roller, and then I pinned one end of the quilt onto the lining roller, and I pinned the other quilt onto the top roller. So you can do that anytime you want to. So you don't have to keep loading, you can just keep quilting. So I'm going to move this over, and we're going to do freehand techniques on this quilt. I call this one a stitch in time because I bought these at an auction, believe it or not. They are hand embroidered pieces that are just appliqued on top of this fabric. And I'm going to do freehand techniques around them, and I'm looking at, in order to do that, I want each one to be unique, so I don't want to do the same thing around each one. So if we just look at the theme of what we're doing, this one has a little girl hugging a horse. It says, "Hold your horses." And so I'm going to do some loops with some flowers because there's some cute little daisies here. So I'm just going to incorporate that right into my stitching as I come around here and fill this in with loops. And then I'll go in and I'll do a circle like this, and I'll do a little daisy. And that will reflect what's in that square already and make it much more interesting. So every so often, I'll just go in, do a circle, and do another little daisy. How easy is that to just modify your meandering technique to fit the theme of what you're doing. And then I'll come over here to the edge like that, turn off my machine, and I'll do my little stitches along the edge where I've already stitched around that square. So that's completely hidden. And then I'll go down and bring up my thread as usual, and we'll come over here, and this one says don't cry over spilt milk. So I think what I'll do on this one is echo, because I haven't done that on any of these. So I'm just going to continue to echo as I come around like this. And because this was just appliqued on, it wasn't fused, I may have to work, as you can see with my left hand, I'm kind of working the fabric because there's a little extra fullness in it, but that's okay. I love the look of it. It's exactly what I wanted. If I wanted it to be really flat, I could have fused it down, but it just would spoil the look, I think, of what I'm doing. So we echoed around that one. Do some little stitches again, and then go to the next square. You can see how fast this is going to happen. Now for the background on this quilt, I just want to point out, instead of doing a background, a meandering or cross hatching or whatever, because of the sayings on the quilt, I just started writing some of those cute little phrases, like this one says double dog dare, easy as pie, a fish out of water, lend me your ear, you know, sayings like that. You can go on the internet and find those things. And that's the entire background of the quilt, which I did in a black thread so it would really show up so you could read the quilt. So it's really interesting to look at this quilt. This one, because we have a little kitty here, I decided I would put in, with my loops, I'm going to do a little paw print. And it's real easy to do a paw print. All you have to do is a circle like that, and then some little circles at the top of it. It looks just like a paw print. Everything doesn't have to look completely real that you do. We think everything has to look so natural, and really, if you just suggest to the eye what it's supposed to be, everyone will recognize that as a paw print. So that finishes that square. We'll go up here to the top. Wow, this was a fast quilt. It's going to be so cute in my kitchen. I have red in my kitchen now. I'm very excited about it. So I'm going to start right here. I have done this side, and these are, it says "Let Sleeping Dogs Lie," and I just put a feather around there. I thought that would really be cute on there, and I think it's going to be darling. So I'm going to start here with my feather. This is the stacked feather. So as I come out here like this, I follow part of it back. So I make a teardrop, make a feather, follow the top part of it back, and then back again. Come around, follow the top of the feather back, and then back. Come around, follow. And you can even make little short ones here. They don't all have to be long. And then I'm going to follow the stem back to the beginning, like that, and then this will complete the feather. Now this time, I have to go out to the edge. They're going to be a little smaller. There we go. And then I'll start the stacked. I combine feathers so much. I'll do one kind, and then I'll go into another one, depending on where I am and what use I need. This goes right out to the edge because I want to fill in this entire rectangle with these feathers as I come around. And then I'll fill in like this with the teardrops. Go back into the stacked feather, follow that around. And there's my feather. And for the last little square, we have a little bird. It says the early bird gets the worm. And of course there's flowers here. Okay, I moved that a little bit closer to me so it's easier to reach. And I'm going to do a few little song notes here. And if I recall, they just have like a circle there like that, and then they have like a little flag on them. Some of them have more depending on what kind of a note they are. And then I can just move my needle over to another area, and I'll do another one. There we go, and maybe one more. 3 is always good. There we go. So some little song notes like that. And from this song note, I'm just going to go over here, take a couple of stitches where I've outlined the saying there. And then I'm going to do some leaves, because remember it does have the flowers in it. And so I'm just going to fill in some of these leaves like this. So he'll look like he's like in a tree. And then I will put in maybe just a little flower. And I'm just looking at the flower here and just copying exactly what the little embroidery work looks like. So that will really go with it. So really look at your quilts. Take a clue from your quilts. I know you're also worried about what is exactly the right thing to put on a quilt. And all you have to do is let the quilt talk to you. Let the quilt dictate to you what it wants on it. That's really cute. And now this is completely finished, and I'm so excited about it. So I hope you learned some fun tips today.